Welcome to your everyday math lesson for Unit 6, and we're going to do lesson 6.1 today. So Unit 5, we learned a lot about fractions. We worked a lot with fractions, with multiplying and dividing. Unit 6, we're going to go back and look at decimals a little bit more and go a little deeper into it. So when we're working with decimals, I know that sometimes we get a little anxious. There are some simple rules that can help. So I'm going to teach you a couple of those rules today, especially when we're using powers of 10. So I'm going to go way back. I'm going to talk first about when we multiplied using exponential form. When I say powers of 10, that's what I mean, is exponential form, okay? So if I say 7 times 10 to the third, I know that that's the same thing as 7,000 because it means 7 times 1,000, right? You also can think about this as moving a decimal. 7 by itself would look like this, so 7 wholes. And then I could put a decimal here. Think about like $7. I could put a decimal, and that is $7, right? When you multiply by an exponent, your decimal actually moves to the right. So because I'm multiplying by 3, my decimal would move 3 spaces. And we know that in our empty spots, we put zeros, right? Basically, 7 times 10 to the third means I move my decimal 3 spaces. And guess what? If I move my decimal 3 spaces, look at my final answer. It's the same. So when we're multiplying and dividing by decimals, this is the basic principle that we're going to work on today. All right, so we are going to start by multiplying powers of 10. That means you're going to move the decimal to the right. That means that my number is going to get bigger. I'm going to move that decimal to the right. Now, we are going to do a little bit of practice with this. So what's going to happen is that we're going to take notes with multiplying first, and then we'll talk about dividing. So we are going to be in your math workbook. So your student version, Everyday Math Volume 2, we are going to be on page 196. And I am going to zoom in. Now think about this. When you multiply a number by the power of 10, is the product going to be bigger or smaller? So think about my first example. 7 times 10 to the third. It's going to be larger. Why do you think it's going to be larger? I want you to see if you can come up with a reason as to why my number would get larger when I multiply by a power of 10. So I'm going to give you a minute to write down your answer. What do you think? So for me, I know that my answer is going to be larger because I'm multiplying by a number bigger than 1. Or by a number larger than 1. Absolutely. That is a good way to put it. I know that 10 to the first is the same as 10. 10 to the fifth is a large number, and I know that's the same as 100,000. Those are definitely bigger than 1, right? So that's what I would put. That's my reasoning. Now, it says use a calculator to complete the table. We don't necessarily need to use a calculator. Okay, I'm going to help you through this, and I'm going to work with you, okay? So if I actually were to type these in the calculator, I'm going to give you the answers to the first couple, and let's see if you can find a pattern. So 4.5 times 10 to the first would be 45.3. 453. 4530. Interesting. Interesting. So let's think about it this way. How many decimal places did this one move? 1. Did it go to the right or to the left? Well, my decimal was here, and it went here, so it moved to the right. Let's check the next one. It was here, it went 1, 2. So it went to the right again, 2 spaces. Right, 3 spaces. I want you to see if you can fill out the rest of this chart, okay? So looking at the pattern that we have so far, we know it's going to move to the right. So one thing that you can do, I'm going to do this one actually out on my noteboard, my whiteboard. 4.53 times 10 to the 4th would be next, right? 4.53 times 10 to the 4th. So I go 1, 2, 3, 4. And then in my empty spaces, I put zeros. So my answer for this next one would be 45,300. 45300. Now, if you want to put the decimal, you can. That is fine. It is not necessarily required as long as you know what to do. Again, it moved to the right. 4 spaces. You try this one on your own. 4.53 times 10 to the 5th. What is my result in standard notation? All right, your answer should have been 453,000. If I move my decimal and I move it 5 spaces, then it's going to be 453,000. It moved to the right. 5 spaces. Now we're going to do 10 to the 6th. For this one, I want you to tell me what is the result in standard notation. Okay, did it move to the right or to the left? Awesome. And now how many places did it move? All right, here we go. You should have 4,530,000. It moved to the right 6 places. Now, let's look at the results in this table. What do you notice? I do need a complete sentence, by the way, and I need to know what you see. What do you notice about these numbers or the movement? What do you notice? Maybe you look at the exponent. What do you notice? So if I were going to write in complete sentences, I'm going to look at the power of 10 in each row and the movement of the decimal. The decimal moves the same number of spots, spaces, whatever you want to say, as the exponent. That would be a good notice. You could say, I noticed the numbers are getting larger. I noticed that it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. What do you guys notice? It's your idea. So use those patterns and write a rule that you can use for multiplying a decimal by the power of 10. I want you to help me think through this rule. I'm not going to have you write one on your own. We are going to think through this together. So stop for a second, and I'm going to put a pause right here because I really want you to think and see if you can come up with an idea for this. See if you can think of a rule, and then we're going to work this out. Did you think it through? I hope so. So let's think this through together. So using the patterns that we notice. So the rule that we're finding out is when you're multiplying by a power of 10, right? So when you multiply a decimal by a power of 10, what do we do? Well, the decimal moves to the right, so we can include that. Okay, it's going to move to the right, but how do we know how much it'll move? Well, we know because of the exponent. So the decimal will move to the right. The exponent tells you how many spaces. Now, there is another little part of this. When we remember on these, we had to add those zeros, right? So I'm going to put that on as part of my rule so I remember. You may need to add extra zeros. You may need to add extra zeros. Okay. Now, if you divide the start number by a power of 10, is my quotient going to be bigger or larger? What do you think? What's going to happen if I start with a number and I divide by a power of 10? Will my quotient be larger or smaller? Let's think this through. Dividing by a power of 10. Well, if I divide a number, that means my answer is going to be smaller. So I don't expect any different when I'm using powers of 10. So that's what I'm going to write here. If you divide it, what is it going to be? If you divide a number by a power of 10, your answer will be smaller because you are dividing by a number larger than 1. That's what I would put for this question. What I want you to do right now, I'm going to have the video paused. I want you to write these down in your math journal. Make sure you have these good explanations because you are going to use this later in the lesson. When you are done, hit continue. All right, we're now going to look at page 197, and on this page, it also says to use a calculator to complete the table. So we can, but I'm going to help you with those answers. Trying to type in the powers can be a little difficult, so that's when you would need to convert it. So you would type like 67.2 divided by 10, 67.2 divided by 100. So you would just have to know how to type it. So I'm going to help you out, and I'm going to give you these answers. So this one would be 66.72, 0.672, 0.0672, 0.00672, 0.000672, and 0.0000672. I want you to take a minute and I want you to write those down. When you are done, you may hit continue. Whew. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you on my whiteboard how this works and how I figured out those answers so quickly. So 67.2. If I'm going to divide that by 10, basically what I do is I move my decimal right here, one spot, because 10 to the first is the same as 10, right? Now, another way that you can think about this is if I have $67 and I divide it by 10 people, they're each going to get about $6, right? That's why we do it that way. Now, the American number system is awesome because it does go in groups of 10. So we have our tens, we have hundreds, thousands. So that's the good thing about our number system is we can do powers of 10 very, very easily, okay? So whatever your power of 10 is, that's how many spots you're going to move. So imagine we're dividing it by 10 to the 6th. We're going to check our answer. Okay, are you ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So every empty space has a 0. And when you write a decimal, it has to have a 0 before it. So that's how you're going to write that answer. Perfect. Now, our direction that the decimal moved was to the left. How many spaces did my decimal move? So it went from here to here. So that's 1 space. Let's check this one. Boop, boop. It moved to the left 2 spaces. I bet you can figure out what the rest of this chart is going to look like. I want you to take a minute. I want you to fill it out. And when you're done, I want you to choose the answer that looks like you have your chart filled out. Well, I'm not really going to have you choose an answer like that. I'm going to have you type in something in a little bit. So go ahead and take a minute. I'm going to pause the video. You type in the chart however you think it is, and we'll check it in just a moment. When your chart is filled in, hit continue. All right, so each of these should have said left because it moved to the left. This one moved 3 places, 4, 5, and 6. Now, looking at the results, comparing the power of 10 in each row and the movement of the decimal, what do you notice? Just like when we multiplied with the power of 10, what do you notice about the numbers when we divide by a power of 10? All right, so what I'm going to write is the decimal, decimal, okay, moves to the left the same spaces as the exponent. Now, our rule is going to be very, very similar to the one that we wrote for multiplication. So I want you to see if you can write the rule on your own. So in our lesson, I want you to go ahead and pause when we're done with this little question, and I want you to try to write the rule on your own. Type it in the answer and let's see what you can get. So this is what I wrote for my rule. If you look at the rule that we wrote for multiplication, it's basically the same rule, but it just has a couple little tweaks. I said when you divide by a power of 10, the decimal will move to the left. That's the only difference. The two rules are exactly the same, but what you need to keep in mind is which way does the decimal move. Multiply, the decimal goes to the right. Divide, the decimal goes to the left. So what rules did you discover to multiply, or use the rules that we discovered to multiply number 7 through 12, but I do not want you to use a calculator. So I'm going to start with number 7, and I'm going to do 7 with you. Multiply, I know multiply goes to the right. Divide goes to the left. Okay, so I'm going to write that on my paper to give me a hint. I am multiplying by 10 to the second power. That means I move to the right 2 spaces. So I'm going to go 1, 2. I have an empty spot, so I put a 0. So my answer for this one would be 580. I want you to see if you can do number 8. Notice I'm dividing this time by the power of 2. What answer did you get for number 8? For this question, I am dividing, so I'm going to go to the left. 1, 2 spaces. My empty spot, I'm going to put a 0. And also, it's less than 1, so I'm going to put a 0 in my 1 spot. So 0.028 should have been your answer. Let's see if you can do number 9. This one might be a little bit easier because you don't need to add any zeros. What answer did you get for number 9? 2 spaces. 6.739 should have been your answer. All right, number 10, multiply 23.7 times 10 to the second. All right, here we go. 1, 2, 2, 3, 7, and then a 0, and my decimal would go there. That is my answer for number 10. Number 11 and 12 will be on your math boxes for the day. So if you do my math boxes with me, I am going to do those for a check for understanding for this lesson. So you are going to do 11 and 12 in that assignment. Number 13, explain the placement of the decimal in your answer for problem number 7. I want you to also, this is going to be extra credit with your math boxes. I want to see if you can give me some wording to explain why we put the decimal where we did. It is required that you try it, and I do need complete sentences, but I do want you to see if you can use this to help you with the lesson. Okay? Have a great day, guys.